Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you this evening. And we're going to be talking about 5 ways to have the magic of just starting on something that you've been putting off for ages. And so I'm going to be telling you all about some details around that. And so that you can finally get started on that project, that creative activity you've been thinking about, the task, that difficult conversation, that thing at work, your leadership, delegation, whatever it's going to be for you. So for me, it's starting to do regular videos. I've been on and off in this community doing events, and I'm finally now ready to get into some consistent video communication with all of you. And this has been one thing that I've been dreaming about for ages, and I'm finally getting to it. So let's jump right in. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Sarah Francescuti. I am a executive leadership coach. I used to call myself a mindset coach, but really that mindset is one big piece of leadership in general, whether that's leadership in a formal assigned role or leadership in your life and wherever you work and wherever you contribute to the community. So I am super excited to be sharing this with you. And part of it is just me getting started. And I thought about, well, if that energy is happening for me, maybe that is also happening for you all as well. So let's just jump right in. So the first one is really the magic around just starting something. You know, there is, I think, a barrier sometimes. I know for me and a lot of you as well are high performers in your leadership roles, in your organizations. You run your own business, you're a CEO, perhaps you are a director or a VP or maybe not. Maybe you're unrelated to leadership, but you're in this Exhale and Thrive community anyway, so welcome. So whether you're in a formal leadership role or in whatever position that you are in your work and your personal life, the desire to be able to run before we can walk, right? To be able to be at that high level version of ourselves before actually getting the time to get there is difficult. It's not fun to feel like we don't know what we're doing. My daughter is 19 months old now, and I'm watching her she's still figuring out how to walk, and she's having to go through all the stages to get there. She's not walking and running yet, but she's getting closer and closer every day. And it reminds me back when I first started my first coaching website and a meditation website years ago now, probably about 10 years ago. If you were to see it now, I'm sure it would not live up to the standards of websites today. But I remember I was following at the time the Zen Habits blog by Leo Babatua, and he was talking about how if you want to be at that high quality professional state, you need to start doing things when they're uncomfortable. And so I know that this can be hard. It's hard to kind of get started on things, especially if it's something that you really care about, that is passionate driven for you. And I know a lot of you leaders out there you're very visionary and you really want to make a difference in the world. You want to help other people. And sometimes you feel like that vision maybe is too far away from where you are today. So that's why I wanted to share this topic with all of you. But the idea about step one, just starting, is you finally can get yourself going so that you'll go through those awkward stages and then you'll eventually get to that place that you're looking to create in your project, in your life, in your leadership, and in the impact you're going to have in the world. So the second one is really around the magic of a beginner's mind. So if you haven't heard of this term before, it kind of comes from the Zen concept of basically being a beginner. If you imagine anytime you've started doing something new, you don't know what you don't know yet. You're kind of in this sort of, you're very present, you're really aware, you're really being very careful in everything that you're doing. You're coming with these fresh and inspired ideas, and the magic can really happen in this beginner mind sort of state. And so one example I've had recently is I'm actually been working on a board now for 4 years, and we're at a point now that we've created an equity committee working on focusing on diversity and equity as a lot of organizations are right now. And we're creating a work plan for that. And well, I don't have a certification in diversity. I have some lived experience in some of my diversities. I don't have as many as maybe some others have. But what is cool is I've been bringing in my beginner's mind perspective, just as the rest of the committee that I'm leading, they also are bringing their beginner's mind. And so what's been fun is because of that, we don't know what we're doing. And so we're figuring it out as we go. We're all really impassioned and inspired and really putting a lot of effort into it. It's been really fun to see each of the committee members bring forward their genius and contribute to the document that we ended up submitting. And we got feedback that saying that it was excellent, not just from one person, but from multiple people. And it surprised me because I was in that awkward starting stage. You know, this is a new committee. I'm a new chair in the role in this new committee. And so we're sort of in that fumbly, awkward stage, that just starting stage. But what's been fun is because we're in that beginner stage, we've actually been bringing extra excellence, perhaps, than if we'd maybe been doing it for 20 years and kind of really not really that engaged with it. So the beginner's mind piece is number 2. The third one is really about taking inspired action. And this is where that visionary piece of yourself can really come together into doing. So it's not necessarily about knowing how you're going to do it all. It's just about taking that first step. And sure, you've heard this term before, but I find it's really good to remember when you are looking at doing something that's new, that you've been desiring to do, but that you're not really sure about how it's going to all play out yet. And it's easy to get stuck in our heads, stuck in paralysis around it, you know, thinking about it. And I do believe very much in visualizing and thinking things through beforehand, setting those intentions beforehand. So when you come to actually doing something, you already have an idea of what you're going to be doing. That approach is massively powerful. And I'm not saying don't do that, but what I'm really trying to get at in this point is taking inspired action and then trusting that the rest of the steps will come out as you move forward. So one example would be the Global Leadership Summit that I ran back a few months ago in February. I was inspired and we pulled it together in a matter of what I think 4 to 6 weeks. And from the moment of inspiration to actually launching the event, what was cool is I had no idea, just knew I wanted to do it. I was inspired and decided to just take action. So I took one action. I asked one of my amazing friends to see if she would be a speaker with me. And then another one of my colleagues, coaches, she became a speaker. And then within 2 weeks, I had 20 speakers. And then within a few more weeks, we had over 300 people sign up for the event. And it was just amazing because I didn't know how to run a summit. I hadn't done it before, but I figured it out as I was going. So I'm hoping that this will inspire you as you're looking at what's maybe on your list that you've been wondering about and wanting to get to lately. So I'd love to hear in the comments really what actions you're going to be looking at taking action on from this video, whether it's a small task like taking care of that thing you've been procrastinating, or maybe it's a big project that you're going to undertake finally. I'd love to hear about it. Let us know in the comments so we can cheer you on. So taking inspired action, letting the hows come out from there. The fourth piece is going to be around taking the smallest, tiniest step that you can possibly make. And this is one that I've known in the past. You know, you hear about baby steps and doing it that way. And as a high achiever person that likes to take on a lot, I take pride in doing a lot of things in my life. But I found, especially lately as a new mom, the window of time I have sometimes to do things is really small, or the attention time that I have, you know, to do something before maybe I get distracted with my daughter at home, or something comes up, you know, with your work role. You get an email, a phone call, somebody comes into your office, you can get interrupted quite quickly. So the smallest step concept, I've now been breaking it down to tiniest little micro step. So one example was we borrowed a toy from a friend for our daughter to play with. And so we were going to return it. So instead of getting it packed up in the car, writing a thank you note and dropping it off right away, all I did was move the toy to near the front door. The next day, or multiple days later, the tiny thing that I did is I got a thank you card out of my stationery box and I put it on my desk. I didn't even write it because that was a bigger step than I had the time and energy for at the time. And then later, in that day, I wrote the letter and then we delivered it from there. So it's just a silly example, and maybe it's not relevant to what you're working through, but I wanted to share it as an example of how you can really break things down into tiny little steps. It wouldn't have taken me very long to do all of those things in one step, but I found when I can break things down, I'm positioning myself for that next step much more easily. So then the fifth point is really around setting a time and dedicating space for that activity. So for example, right now, I've deliberately set aside time this evening to come on and record this for you and share these tips. And so I didn't do it all in one step. I was doing things earlier about thinking about what I was going to talk about. I wrote my notes later in the day, and then now I'm sitting down and presenting. And I found that this powerful step here of setting aside the time has been life-changing for me and my clients. So I actually call it the inside-out scheduling approach. You may have heard me talk about it before if you've been around here for a while. If you haven't, I'm sure I'll be sharing more later, and I can put the link to the Inside Out Scheduling Guide, which is my free guide that talks all about it in more detail. I'll put that in the comments after the video here. But what I wanted to share with you about that is the whole concept is creating time and space for things that re-energize you. So, and the topic of today's video would be creating time and space for that project, that task, whatever it is that's important to you that you have been putting off and you're ready to finally take on. So when I've worked with my coaching clients over the years, just for them setting aside time for their self-care daily, and then setting aside time for some white space so they can get that creativity, they can get that perspective and get into that strategic thinking perspective, has allowed them to shift massively in their roles, address any outstanding kind of nagging issues they had within their teams, perhaps. They were finally able to address staffing issues, and then finally get to the strategic projects. So for one of my clients, she was a regional director for a nonprofit organization. She, in implementing this approach of setting aside time daily for her morning walks, that ripple effect then led into 2 months later, she had the time and the space to finally implement her strategic outreach project within the region. What was cool was she'd been thinking about this for years and had never really gotten to doing that because she was always focused on these other things. And so by creating the space to really get that energy and addressing the issues that needed addressing, so she had the space to do it, she was finally able to make bigger relationships within the key players in the region, which led to increased fundraising for her organization and more research and an incredible impact within the region, which was just mind-blowing what came out of her setting aside an hour to do a walk every morning. Another example is one of my other clients. She's a vice president of finance in her organization, and she did her own version where she set aside time in the morning to do meditation and journaling, and that led into her being able to delegate fully finally to her team that she needed to do so that she could get out of the transactional into the high big picture perspective, that strategic thinking and all of that. And so then she was able to implement a new software program that they had for their finance processes of invoicing and billing and all of that, which was going to not only help her staff do better, but the whole organization was going to be able to go almost paperless from their financial reporting perspective. And it was going to take less time for everybody that was doing traveling and all of that. So the ripple effect in her organization was huge, just from her, again, focusing on setting aside time for those self-care pieces and then those projects that really matter to her. So I could go on about examples, but I think you probably get the point here. So these 5 points we've talked about today, the idea of just starting, even if it feels awkward and uncomfortable, getting through that initial beginner's stages. Then also the second point was the magic of the beginner's mind and allowing that newness to really bring incredible things into whatever it is you're doing. The third point was around inspired action and really taking action without knowing what's going to happen next and trusting that process. Then the fourth point was really breaking it down to the smallest steps. So you're just going to take one tiny little incremental step and let it be easy for you as you move forward. And then finally, The fifth point would be really dedicating the time to both your self-care so that you can fill up your energy, so you have the energy for these incredible projects, but then also setting aside time for those activities to actually happen in your work day or your personal life. So I really hope that you've enjoyed these 5 tips. I plan on sharing more regularly, hopefully every week. That's my intention. So I'd love to hear if there's anything specifically you'd like me to share about, whether it's around leadership, mindset, being present, sort of mindfulness type things, or decluttering, organizing, whatever you feel is going to be most valuable to you. A lot of people always ask about time management pieces. All of those things I'm happy to share about. Strategy, business pieces, organization, process improvement, all of that stuff I'd love to talk about for hours. So let me know in the comments below what your questions are, and I'll look to answer them in future videos. So thank you all for tuning in today. I hope that you found something inspiring in this video. Give me a thumbs up or leave a comment below if you have anything you'd like to share that you feel like could add on, so that other people listening and watching can learn from you as well. So let's be a supportive community here together and really cheer each other on with whatever it is that you are going to be taking on from this video. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great night. Bye.